Okay, so here's an excellent pub question for you. What is better, Ducati Streetfighter V4 or the KTM Super Duke 1290? It's like choosing between your two favourite children, that is, isn't it? These videos only happen because of the support and help from our sponsors. If you need insurance for your bike, go and check out Bike Devil. Support the companies that support us. The naked superbike genre is a rich genre right now. This and the KTM are both absolutely mind-blowing motorcycles in their own right. They're full of the latest technology, so that stuff, you know, the top spec brakes, suspension, electronics packages. They're no longer restricted to just the superbike class. The naked superbikes, you get them in as well. And the horsepower figures are stuff that was MotoGP figures 10 years ago. It's insane, the power. This Streetfighter V4S is 208 horsepower. 208 horsepower in a naked bike. It is absolutely mind-bending. That makes for a pretty interesting road ride. If you've not got any self-control, they're not the road bikes for you. You really, really need to know when to use the power and know when not to on these bikes, or you get yourself in a lot of trouble. They are ballistically quick. But what that power does mean is that you've always got something to put a big smile on your face. It's that twisty bit there. And means that if you turn up to a track day and turn up to on-track events, you don't feel daft not having a full-fared superbike. You've still got more than enough power and certainly more than enough chassis capability to compete with anything else you're going to see on track and not feel like you're getting in the way. They're both big, litre-ish naked sports bikes. They kind of are very, very different things in their own right. And both the KTM and the Ducati sit very nicely in the sort of stereotypes of those brands. So the Ducati is a superbike. It's a sports motorcycle. It doesn't have a fairing. It is actually a lot more comfortable than you might expect from a super sports bike. It's an exquisite chassis, and it's a bike that really is a refined superbike without a fairing. The KTM is quite a different thing. The KTM is a mad, bonkers wheelie machine street bike that each generation they've kind of tamed it down to make its road manners and its performance and handling better and better as you go. So these bikes have both come from different ends of the spectrum. Ducati started as a superbike, a race bike. They made the V4 Panigale, and then they've begun there and moved back to make a naked, uber naked, super duper road bike. The Super Duke started as some sort of mental wheelie idiot machine that was ballistically fast and did jumps and wheelies everywhere. And then they've tried to pull it closer to a track bike, closer to a sports performance bike by refining the suspension, refining the electronics package. So it's interesting that both manufacturers have actually come at the same result from totally different directions. The Streetfighter V4S is, in my mind, one of the most beautiful naked bikes I've ever seen. That might be because I'm distracted by the wings and it feels like a mini MotoGP bike. It's got wings. Wings make everything better. We've been told this. The internet knows. But it is a stunning looking motorcycle. There are a few niggly bits in the details when you get close. Things like pipes and wires sticking out over the side of the bike that, sure, they're a working part of the motorcycle, but if you're being fussy, up close some of those details do bug me. The KTM I don't think is as pretty a bike from afar, but then up close some of the detail work is maybe a bit neater than Ducati has done on this. And maybe again that shows that this started out as a bike with fairings, that they took the fairings off, as the KTM has been a naked bike from the off. Now, in terms of riding these things on the road, this Streetfighter V4S is a much more flowing ride, if that makes sense. It doesn't constantly wheelie and charge and yank at your arms and brake to be free. You can ride it at 80%, you can ride it at 20%, and it still rides really nicely. And then when you want to turn up the wick, it's got all the wick you could ever want. This thing, I think, works better as a enjoyable flowing road bike. If you just like going out, flowing around mountain roads and having a really good sports ride but without going mental, the Streetfighter V4S is the better bike of the two, in my opinion. The KTM sits more on the lunatic end of the spectrum. The KTM will make you do bad stuff. It will make you behave like a child, and every ride you take on it, for that matter, becomes a right laugh, but sometimes it's definitely a little bit much. especially if you've got a guilty conscience when you get home. The Ducati is a super bike with no fairing, so it makes you feel like you're riding a sports bike, but in a more comfortable riding position. The KTM makes you feel like you're riding something that came from a mental supermoto off-road manufacturer, which is exactly where that bike comes from. Now get on track, and I'm actually of a slightly different opinion. I think the V4 Streetfighter V4S is a more refined track package. Performance, you'd have to ride them back to back on the same day to make a call on that. But to me, the Streetfighter V4S feels like it's a better polished, better developed track motorcycle, as you'd expect from something that's basically a Panigale with big handlebars. That said, I'd rather ride a Super Duke 1290 on track because it's more fun. It's not as well behaved, it's not as refined, but it put a bigger smile on my face on track than the V4S did, purely through its unruly behaviour, its tendency to wheelie, and the way the engine makes an incredible amount of power from really low down in the revs. Sounds like a bit of a backwards conclusion. I'm saying this is probably better on track, but the Super Duke's more fun. But you have to make your own decision on that stuff. Now, in terms of the day-to-day living with these bikes and the everyday reliability, neither of them's a practical motorcycle. If you're looking to tour, to ride all weathers, to commute through the winter, sure, buy a Streetfighter V4S, buy a Super Duke R, put them in the garage and buy something crap for it to work on, because there's no wind protection, they're not incredibly comfortable. The electronics package means that yeah, you're going to be safe, you're going to be able to ride it in all weathers, but these things aren't built for slip sliding around greasy, slippery, leaf-covered roads in autumn. They're built for enjoying the good days, the sunny days, and the track days. I've talked around the block a bit there. For road use, I'd definitely take the Streetfighter V4S. For track use, I'd definitely take the KTM Super Duke. What would I pick as my one to have if I had to choose between the two bikes? It's a tricky one. I don't want to be swayed by the fact I'm stood in Ducati's warehouse at the moment, but I think the Ducati just ekes it out for me on the fact that I see myself using a bike like this on the road more than the track, and I find this a nicer road bike to ride. There are things about this bike that make it feel that little bit extra special. It doesn't hide the fact that it came from a Panigale, and I kind of like that. I grew up in an era when everyone wanted naked superbikes and most people were making their own by taking the fairings off of Fireblades, and it's nice that sure, this has got a lot of other refinements to make it a better road bike than the Panigale, but it's nice to see that kind of superbike DNA. It doesn't feel like you've given up on buying race bikes. It feels like you're buying a race bike, you're just buying one with wide bars. And for the child in Chris, that works really well. If I was in for a ride where I was going out for one Sunday afternoon, a wild blast, and I wanted to come home with the biggest, stupidest smile on my face, feeling a little bit naughty, that's where the KTM comes into its own. So if you're looking for a super refined, ballistically fast, naked road bike, get a Streetfighter V4S. If you're looking to have your pants pulled backwards over your head and feel like an idiot and grin like a self-abusing ape, go and buy the KTM 1290. Either way, neither of these is a bad bike, and both of them will put an immense smile on your face every time you ride them.